So, all right. So what you're going to do is you're going to say new project, and it's going to be a residential project. So I pick a residential project and I say open. Again, remember the create new project versus project template. We always pick the project until we're modifying a template. We say OK, and we're going to start out with this. Okay, we're going to. So let's talk about the horizontal. All right, so if you look at the floor plan, actually I have a more convenient floor plan for myself. The overall house is 34 feet by 28 feet, right? So when we start out, usually we're still thinking plans. The definition of a floor plan is horizontal section at 4 feet. Yep. Um, so what we're going to start out is the first floor, and we're just going. This is the outline of the house, and these walls are the outline of the house. And actually, some of the dimensions are missing, so I'll give those to you, and we'll figure this out. All right. So um, the first thing I'm going to introduce you to uh, a tool here on the architectural on the architectural ribbon here. If I look down at the end, there's a thing called a work plane. We have work planes. A work plane is it is a reference. It is I kind of use it as a construction aid. Like a construction line. When you drew by hand, it's actually like a construction line. And if you look at elevation here, you see these lines. These are actually work planes. These are it's basically part of a grid system, right? So these are the floor. This is the basement. We've kind of worked with that, and on Tuesday we're going to adjust these. I don't know what those are going to be adjusted to quite yet, but they're set for this. And typically you might have uh, a project where this default may not work for you, so we're going to use a different default. So I'm going to go to the first floor to start out. I'm not going to start at the basement. This does have a basement. Um, and I'm going to use a reference plane. So a reference plane, as I said, is on the architectural tab to the far right, and you pick it right here. It is a 2D. It's a 3D. It's actually 3D, but it's a plane basically. Hence reference plane, and you use it to create a reference. So, for example, this overall house is 34 feet. So I'm going to start up here, and I'm going to come down here with this reference plane. Now, reference planes are green dash line. I guess that's green. And they are not visible. They will not print. You'll see them, but they won't print. Typically, I leave mine on. They stay on. You don't really need to, but you can hide them if you need to, if they get too busy, if it gets too busy at some point. Um, so I'm going to put one reference plane here. Doesn't matter how long. And let me just show you what a reference plane is. A reference plane is a model tool, since it's on the architectural view here. And you can actually see it in all views. So if I were to say, I'm going to give it a name. So if you click here on the plane, they've added this the last two versions. You can actually name it here on the spot. So I'm going to name this. And if north is up, this is my left-hand side. What orientation is that? What elevation is that? I needed help. So that's west side. So I'm gonna give it a name, and this comes in handy later. Soon tight. All right, so I'm going to take this, and now that it has a name, I can show you it. Show you it. It's one of the few things that will show up in different views. Notice it's in the second floor view. It's in the elevation view. So it helps me um, control or view or create content that's in the same spot, whether I'm in whatever view I'm in. So I'm gonna take this west elevation. I'm gonna copy over 34 feet. There must be, and I eyeballed that, right? So that's 34 feet. I get these temporary dimensions. If I want to make a temporary dimension permanent, I just pick this right here. So I'm gonna make mine permanent. Remember I told you about the ICS, so I'm gonna put this right smack in the middle. Or close. I'm just gonna eyeball the middle. And then I'm gonna go the other direction. It's 28 feet. Click here, and that's my north side, right? Now, if I pick this and I go to a 3D view, you don't see it, but if I go here and I say show, it shows different reference planes. That's actually one of the grids, but I can actually change which one I'm seeing. So I can actually change this to, once I've named it, I can actually change it, go like the north side. I can pick north side and I say okay, and that's the same reference plane that I just created, right? Just to kind of see. I don't do this very often, so it's something you probably won't do. But if you ever need to see where your reference plane is, that's how you locate your reference plane. So unshow it. I just made it arbitrary. It's ground. It's ground up. Actually, this is how tall it is, and I can make it longer if I want, shorter, um, and it's always visible. I'm actually looking at the south elevation now, so I'm looking at the bottom. When I looked at the plan, I'm looking at the bottom. I'm looking up. So I'm gonna copy this one down 28 feet. 20, and I'm eyeballing this. Or 20, is that 28 feet? Yeah, 28 feet. All right. All right. So those are reference planes. That's a concept. I may ask you about reference planes next quiz. So reference planes um, allow us to construct our model, and it's becomes more important later when you create like families and the like. Now, I don't want these lines to move. They'll If I just grab them and I just move, if I just take it, I can actually drag them someplace. So in order to keep them from moving anywhere, I'm going to use another feature that I'm introducing you to. And this feature is called push pin. So I'm going to go to the modify tab where I am now. And right here. Now, we don't pin everything. We just pin those major reference points. So I don't want, this is my overall size of my house. I don't want my house to get any bigger. I don't want it to get any smaller. Trust me, it happens to a lot of students first time they do this. All of a sudden they discover their house is 32 feet or 33 feet and 58 and 1 and 58 inches. I don't know how it got that way, but it so you don't want it to move, so you'll pin this, but you will not pin other things. And I'll tell you later about that. So I'm going to pin this. So these are called push pins. You'll see that. Push pin will keep the object that you pin from moving. I can't accidentally move this. The only way I can move it is unpin it. The only way I can delete it is unpin it. If I were to try to delete it, it will fuss at me. Earlier versions of Revit, it wouldn't even fuss at you. It'd fuss at you and said, I'm just not doing that. So you have to unpin it to move it, and that's a helpful tool. So you're going to use that to keep your overall dimensions fixed. Got me? So that's push pin. That's on the modify tab. That's right here. Right here is unpin. So if I wanted to unpin something, I could really all you have to do is click on the pin. I've never really you could push this to unpin it, or you unpin it, but it's still pin. I mean, the pin's still there, so you can reactivate the pin. So let's say I get something wrong, I can unpin it, and then I could change the dimension. By the way, and this is the kind of stuff I want to kind of talk a little bit more about. Like this dimension here, this is a permanent dimension, but notice it turned blue when I picked this one reference plane. I can actually move that by changing the dimension. So let's say I actually want to add 1 inch on there. And so it just moves what I unpinned, or what I've selected. So to move something, it has to be unpinned, unconstrained. We'll talk about unconstrained. And you can actually pick the object and change the dimension, or change the temporary dimension, and it will move. Okay, I did this, right? And this is blue now. See that? So if I click on that, anytime you see a dimension that's blue, you can change that dimension. I don't know if any guys know this. They got some AutoCAD folks in it. This works in AutoCAD too. I love this feature because sometimes I'm calculating things. If you've used spreadsheets, you'll know about this. But if I put an equal sign here and I say plus 4 inches, let's say I'm being lazy. That's extremely lazy right there. It will calculate it for me inside the dimension. So you could have a complicated situation, and all you have to do is say equal, just like you would in an Excel spreadsheet. Oops, excuse me. Equal, and then you could add and put an equation behind it, and it will change that number. Just a little tidbit, helps with layout. I use it all the time. But I'm surprised how many people don't know about it. And it's true in AutoCAD. So if you're working in AutoCAD, you can change your dimensions that way as well. So I'm going to give this baby a name. Does it have a name? I think I put 2 on it. So it actually, the new feature. This is a new feature. New feature. It actually names it for you automatically, which I appreciate, because if it's not named, you can't select it from that menu I showed you where you actually want to see it. It has to have a name. So it's it's very useful for it to have a name. It's almost required. All right. So now we're going to draw some walls around this. So we go to our wall section here. I guess I have to figure out this is basically a rectangle and kind of a not quite a square, right? Everybody see that? So I'm looking at the dimension here, and it's the living room is what, 18 by 14? Does that look like what it looks like to you? Is that 18, you think? Yeah, it's got to be, because look at the 13 plus 5 is 18. So so we're going to take the reference plane, and we're going to come out here 18. Notice I get temporary dimensions. So they're blue. So if I pick this, and actually it's going to be a little bit more than 18 feet. So I'm gonna use 19 for now. I may have to adjust this later, right? I'm gonna say 19 feet, and that moves over 19 feet to 19 feet. I'm gonna use that for the exterior of this wall, this pretty major wall that goes through here. There's a major wall that goes through here like that. Okay. And then I'm looking at the porch. So we're just I'm gonna put a line here. That's probably and then I'm gonna say, okay, let's make this 4. Has anybody ever made their own scale? You know what I'm talking about? Probably not. This, when I printed it, was not the scale. So what I can do is take a dimension that I know on here and just create my own little dimension, my own little scale. So I'm assuming this is a scale. So if it's not the scale, then then I have some error. But if I go here and I divide, make a mark here, and I divide this up 8 equal times, I don't even have a architectural scale. Does anybody have an architectural scale? Isn't that disgusting? I'm an architect. I don't even know where my scales are. I actually do know where my scales are. All right. Well, I know this is 8 feet. So okay. So I think 4 feet's good. So I'm going to just make it 4 feet. We'll adjust this if we need to adjust this a little bit. That's the one great thing about a program like Revit. We'll be able to adjust it with no problem. And we're going to come out here 2 feet. I think the other projection is 2 feet. If it's different, we'll change that. So we're just basically creating the outline of the house. Okay. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is we'll create this wall type that we're working on. So I'm going to go architectural wall, and this one actually happens to be clapboard. So I'm going to pick wood on siding wood, on wood stud. Tired. Let's see. Now, who's done a wall section in here? Has everybody done a wall section in here? All right, so we've got siding. If you look somewhere in the middle here, right here, we have a description of what that wall is. And that wall is fiber cement siding, 1/4-inch XPS foam furring strips. I'll be with you in a second on that one. 1.5 inch, 1.5 inch XPS rigid insulation, 1/2 inch OSB. Well, everybody knows what OSB is by now, right? 1 inch. We're not going to really deal with this, but 1 inch rigid XPS insulation at corners, and R19 cellulose insulation. That's the insulation inside, and we're using 2x6s at 24 inches on center, and then 1/2 inch drywall. So we're going to modify a wall that's close to that, is what we're going to do. All right. So we can come back later and refine it. So if I go edit, duplicate, and we go wood siding on wood stud, and we may want to, it's still the exterior wall. We just might say fiber cement siding. on wood studs, and then I'm gonna just shorthand it, and I'm gonna call it net zero. So anything that has net zero at the end of it will be our walls and our roof, our floors, everything that we've created will belong to us. If I wanted to group them together in the types, then I would have changed the exterior. Everybody kind of, this is a subtle thing, very subtle thing that I'm trying to explain here. But net zero, I'm going to call everything. Right, correct. Got it. Yep. So that way I don't get lost. Okay. And so I'm going to edit this, preview it, and we're going to go through here. We may have to come back and fix it later. There's a point that I'm trying to make here before we finish, so I want to make sure I make it. So we look at this wall, and it's not like our wall that we want to make. So the first thing we're going to make is we're going to change this fiber cement if it exists. Oh, I got that problem. The problem Steve had the other day. Look at that. May not be editing anything. So that's a bug. I will be telling them about that. Is anybody else? Can they do it? Can you access your materials? Oh, okay. um, Nobody knows about outer limits. Yep. So I'm going to be telling them about this bug. I'm going to email them tonight. Um, no telling. It could be the installation, or but it's not all the time. I know that if I reboot the computer, most likely it'll work. But I'm not going to spend this particular computer. If I reboot it, it's going to take too long. All right. So bummer. um, so there's always one little thing. All right. So this is sort of introduction to location lines. If you look at this, without having edited, it's going to be difficult to explain here. And you look at let's look at the face of the basement below, and imagine drawing a line all the way up. That's going to be my exterior face of core. Right? Remember location lines? I was talking about how important they are. See, this says location line, and I have a wall center line set for it, but there's actually one here that's core face exterior. That's what we're going to be using. So when we lay this wall out on the 34 feet, that dimension 34 feet actually goes to the face of the stud. Carpenters here? You do carpentry? Huh? You do everything. Yeah, okay. So you know it's to the rough, right? So we're dimension to the rough. Hmm? Well, we're dimensioning it to the rough. We're gonna draw this wall based upon the rough. So the actual width of the house is gonna be just slightly more than 34 feet. All right. And all right. So that's exterior finish face. So we're gonna set the location line for exterior finish face. And we're gonna it doesn't really matter how tall the wall is, but we're going to let this wall go down to top of footing. No offset. We're going to make it 20 feet tall. And we're going to go clockwise. We're going to set the detail level on fine. And we're going to go for it. Let's see. So I'm going to start here. So everybody, hmm, did it slip? Oh, mine slipped. Mine went to the finish phase. Sorry. Or I didn't check again. All right, I knew there was something wrong. So you got to make sure you look, especially since it's not extra thick like we would have had. So if I go to core face, exterior, and I start right here and I go to the left, you'll see that there are layers that are beyond the face of that work plane. Everybody see that? So if you look at if you look at this, see how the finish, the insulation and the exterior clapping here extends beyond the face of the foundation wall. That's what we want, and we want that to stay that way. So I'm going to draw it this way, zoom out to this corner, and I'm going to draw it down here. Now I'm eyeballing it. You may have to hold shifts down to hold it 90 degrees. I'm going to come here. I'm only going to come up to here. Just the exterior wall. And then I'm going to come all the way up to here. All the way up to here. And then I'm going to close it. And if you look at it, it looks like this. Wow, model. No, this is going to be a siding for now. That's stucco. Maybe we'll change it to stucco, but for now we'll just use clapboard. Right, but we don't see it now, right? See that? We see just the we just see this clapboard. So if you had done it the first way we did with wall section, you would have done the foundation, then you would have done this. But we're going to use method 2 here. Right? Remember this B wall that we did? Right? We're going to do this with using that technique. So if I go back to the first floor and I cut a section through here, and it's always good to have a cross section. That's a cross section, and there's a cross section, and then a longitudinal section. Actually, we're going to have a couple of longitudinals. Okay, so I neglected to tell you about one thing here, which is important, which I intended to tell you about. Go to Modify and Align, and we're going to pick Face of Core. We're going to touch the reference plane, touch the house, the line of the exterior face of core, and there'll be a little constraint here, and we'll lock it. And you'll do that for all your walls. If you do not do this, your building can move even though the reference planes are pinned. Right? This line here where you see the reference planes. They'll be the same wall, except there won't be a wall on the outside, uh, layers on the outside. It'll be here forward. So let me do that. We're skipping around a little bit, but like I got this wall, I got this building section. I'm gonna set this for fine. I'm gonna move this down, and I'm gonna give you these level datums. So we're gonna change them around a little bit. But if I take this wall down like this, if I take it down to the basement or the bottom of the footing, I'm not going to constrain it, but I could. But just be reserved in constraining things. right now. I'm going to use the split command. Remember that? 1 foot, unconstrain it, unconstrain it. And let's say my foundation wall is up here, which it won't be, but I'll click here and I'll unconstrain that. I'll unconstrain that. So now I could just simply pick the wall and change the type to be the foundation, right? So let's say we use 10-inch. Notice how it just flipped. Notice it moved in. I've got extra layers over here. I can change this to, this one I'm going to have to play with a little bit, but if I change it to the footing, it's going to do that. Make sure it's unconstrained. You can use the alignment tool and do wall center lines. Pick that, pick this, and then use the constraint. So this is sort of what you got here. Exterior face of core, yes. For the foundation wall, and then there's the exterior face of core of the wood frame wall. Right. And so but they line up the way this section. See how the siding and the insulation drop below the foundation. Right. So I'm going to take this and show you one little thing. When we modify these walls, there's other. You notice there were other little buttons, right? I'm going to change this to section. There are other little buttons, and when we'll edit this wall on Tuesday, I'll after I complain. I'm going to go here to this modify button, and I'm going to touch this and this. If you notice, there's a constraint here. So constraints work in a lot of different ways, but what this will do is it unlocks the layer of the wall, the OSB, and there's the cladding here, right here. So I'm going to do that and say apply, okay, and I got two arrows here. So if I put thin lines on, this is thin lines, I can actually pick this wall and actually pull this down. Right? And if I want it to be equal all the way around, which is probably a good idea, I put a reference plane and I use alignment tool to line it up. So I go to the architecture tab, reference plane, and we'll come across. And I have the water table that you see on that wall section. I have it on there. And I'll talk a little bit more about that if you need to. So this will be, I'll give this the name, bottom of siding. Some of these reference planes are useful because later on during construction documents we can use them to dimension things, and it helps the contractor build it, and so he's not calling you up at 3 o'clock at night or 3 in the morning, right? Nobody left. All right. So, what I want you to do is try to get a start. We're going to talk more about this. I want you to kind of practice with the walls. This wall, I happen to know, is a 2x6. So if I'm looking on the inside, I'm actually going to use a 2x6 architectural wall. When Revit asks for that, which I never bothered to save the first time, I say save. Three saves, something I forgot to do or did not do. Your name, the Carlisle. What do you think? All right. So if I take a 2 by 6, actually these don't. I probably want. Yeah, we'll just architectural wall. Then the interior walls. This particular interior wall is going to be 6.5. If I set this for finish exterior, I can. Oops. All right. So it gives me opportunity to review with you this. Right. So if I got this wall and I don't like where it is, I want to move it over. I can either flip it. That's one thing. I can just move it. There's a lot of things I could just I could use the select it and use the arrows and nudge it over. That's called a nudge, or move it. I just used the move command. I did that pretty quick, didn't I? Or you can use the temporary dimensions to move things. So if I don't like this dimension, I can just say, oh, I like that to be nice and even. I can change that. So there's different ways you can do things. Also, at the end of walls, you can pull the walls back by picking the grab. The blue dot here, this blue drag is also on the location line, right? Notice this one's on the edge. That's because I used the exterior finish face. And when you pull it, it will clean up right smack in the middle of that. The next wall is probably not probably, it is a bearing wall, I think. And I'm not being committal, am I? If I come down here and you see it, everybody knows their snaps. If you see a little triangle, that's a midpoint of that wall. And I'm not using wall center line, so but that's kind of, you put the middle. This is a fireplace, so I'll give you that. That's going to be a family. The fireplace there. So I just want you to give this a try, and so I got walls in, and let's say I start putting doors in. So there's some doors. We go to doors. We'll really get into this a little later. We're gonna take this. I don't like any of these doors that they're loaded in here, but I'm gonna take my front door is gonna be a single raised panel with side light. Door, a residential entrance door is what size? Yeah. 36. He said 36 by 7. That's a nice size door. Uh, You mean 7 feet, right? Right. Actually, you can get doors that size now. The old paradigm used to be doors were 3 feet wide, 6'8" residential. So you can use 6'8". At, that's the old style, but more modern houses are 7 foot, 7'4". I've seen, you know. We've gotten luxurious. um, Actually, even before that, I look at really old buildings, really, really old ones from 19th century. A lot of doors are 6'5". People weren't that tall then either. I've seen some that are even, if you go like the Monticello and other places, some of those doors are even smaller. So, um, I'm going over here on the architecture tab, pick a door. They're families. They insert in the wall. So I'm going to pick one that's commensurate with size. It's 36 by 40, 8'4", right? And that one has a side light on both sides. And I just kind of placed it in a wall. and I'm looking at some temporary dimensions. If I want that to be equal, I can eyeball that. See that? So it's very, it's ridiculously easy to place things. If I'm not happy with that, you notice these temporary dimensions. I can change them and adjust it, or I could just move the object a little bit, or I can nudge it. Nudge it. You just select it and you push the arrows. So what I'm going to do is stop right here and let you get started, and make sure you save your file, and and then on Tuesday I will definitely I'll figure out what the material issue is on the computer, and we'll edit the wall. We'll kind of start laying things more out, lay things out more, and I will also give you some more information about what location lines are, constraints are, um, constraints, work planes. Remember, those are the things I've just mentioned to you. So make note of that. Okay, everybody good? Yes, Andrea. Uh, for right now, look at the kind of make a guess, make a good guess. I'm letting you. Some people are really measured about things, and but the dimensions are here, and you can kind of figure it out. Now, I'm not being precise. It's not a watch, right? For contractors, it's supposed to be a watch. You're supposed to dimension everything. I have, okay. Everybody good? Questions? You been? You good? Everybody good? Yeah, I'm gonna process this one and put the other one in the directory, and then I'm gonna figure out how to make sure you can see it on Blackboard. Yes, yeah, yeah. That's why I need to quit now. All right.